You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
Welcome to Convenience Matters again, everyone. My name is John Eichberger with the Fuels Institute and NACS. I'm joined by my co-host today.
I'm Stephanie Sikorski, our Vice President of Marketing over at NACS.
And you know, Stephanie, one of the things about this industry that's so amazing is the family nature of the businesses that have grown up. And today we're going to be talking to Scott Hartman with Rutters out of Pennsylvania, talking about how he's grown his company from the humble origins to being an international global retailer award winner.
Well, that's what I'm most excited about is how do you take that and then grab ideas from a global scale, bring them back home, and stay competitive year after year, decade after decade.
It's going to be a great conversation. Scott, welcome to Convenience Matters.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be part of it.
We are thrilled to have you on board. Now, you've been a part of the NACS organization since I've been around, so 25 years, right?
I have. I hate to count how many years. I'm actually a second generation of the NACS organization. My father was on the board of directors as well.
So that kind of leads us straight off into the conversation. Can you kind of walk us through kind of the history of Rutters, humble origins, all the way up to what you guys are doing these days?
Sure. Well, my mother was a Rutter, so I'm part of the Rutters family, even though my last name's Hartman. And our generational story starts from when the Rutters left Germany back in the 1680s and came to Philadelphia. They migrated out to York County in the early 1700s, and we have a farm that has a deed from Springett's Penn, William Penn's grandson, and that farm was founded in 1743. So our family started as German farmers, raising crops, sowing crops, and eventually, a couple hundred years later, my grandfather's generation started a fluid dairy in 1921. And from that fluid dairy, we expanded into 5 states in the Mid-Atlantic area, and convenience stores started coming out of the family business as a way to sell the milk from the dairy. So our convenience stores started in 1968. So we're celebrating 50 years in convenience and 97 years in the dairy business and 271 in the farming business, all here at the same place.
Congratulations. That's a great family business story.
Thank you.
To be able to say 50 years in convenience. I mean, we're talking about, we've got Amazon Go, the big buzzwords around frictionless retail, and here you are talking about, I've seen it, done it.
Right.
We farmed, and now we're continuing to compete.
Yeah, it's been fascinating watching it since I started at the age of 12 in convenience. It's been quite a change from the original stores to what we have today, but that's part of what makes it so much fun. You have to like change.
What were you doing at 12 years old in convenience stores?
Well, I was probably violating wage and hour rules.
Happy to hear that you went there and not
Statute
us.
of limitations is over, though, so we're good.
They told me as a family member they could get away with that, so they paid me 5 cents an hour for every year old I was, so I thought I was making good money. So back in those days, I was cleaning shelves, cleaning bathrooms, transferring produce between different stores and things of that sort. So just about every job that nobody else wanted to do.
So Stephanie mentioned Amazon Go and the new technology trends we're seeing. You've been involved in taking technology and applying it to your stores since early on. I remember you were one of the founding members of PCAT, which is now NACS, the technology organization within the industry. How have you been able to leverage technological advancements to really kind of gain a competitive advantage?
Well, I guess I was fortunate in the age that I grew up in the sense that I started programming on mainframes, and by the time I got out of college, they were starting to come up with laptops. So it was an interesting time to give me experience to see how quickly technology can change. And then I went into consulting with Pricewaterhouse for 7 years, and I got to consult to a lot of different industries, including food businesses. So in those years, I got to see what technology could do and how it was being applied. And then I came back to my family's business in 1990 and looked at the convenience store industry as a whole and said, wow, we are really behind the curve. We really need to start figuring out how to integrate all these devices that we have in our stores and eliminate all the labor and the pencil and the paper and all those different things that were going on at the time. Were standard cash registers. That was the fundamental thing used in the store was just an electronic cash register with a tape. So I saw it from the very early on of everything manual, lack of integration, and I said to NACS, we ought to start applying these things that other industries are doing, or get organized, get our suppliers and technology to integrate their devices, improve their devices, make them more consumer friendly, and so it was kind of a journey of love watching the technology community through the years embrace how they were going to change and stay up with technology. And today, I think, convenience stores are right out there on the front of customer-facing technologies, while we're probably the most complex industry in the world, considering all the different things that we do under a little roof. You look at all the devices and information flowing and volumes that are going on. Very complex, but we're doing a lot of different things, and we're going to continue to do a lot of things. We were the first in the industry to have a mobile app, and that was, I think, 10 years ago today is when we started the mobile app business, and it seems like forever, but it's still just really the tip of where I think things will go in terms of how we will interact and touch our customers. And I guess I can say that in a politically correct way. We're not physically touching them. We're just providing services to them that are things that they want and that will improve their lives and speed up things for them, which is what we sell, which is time.
Well, and you mentioned something in terms of always looking at what other industries are doing. And I think too often we get caught in our regular routine and just look within, a certain blinder range, we'll say. And I know that your company, yourself specifically, has been engaged on a global scale. How important is it to think outside of the box and even outside of your own country in terms of looking for that next big idea?
I think it's extremely important. I've always embraced change, and change is one of those things that in the old days, it used to be change in the United States came from California, came from the West and flowed east. And through the decades, I've watched how that changed. It's just coming from any corner of the world. It's no longer inside the U.S. We're not the best and brightest at everything, even though we're great at a lot of things. Convenience. One of the things you learn when you go out and start looking at other countries, everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses, and that's what I love to study when I look at businesses. Is what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and honestly, I could care less about their weaknesses. What I'm really wanting to learn from them is how did they get their strength, and then based upon their strength, how does that translate back into our business in some way? And so by going over to Europe years ago and still going over there on trips, you see how focused they are on fresh and how the trends that they started with local markets and the importance of local sourcing of products and non-GMO type items. These are trends that started years ago over there, and we saw them and we began embracing them in many different ways of fresh forward cases and trying to move our business more into a fresh model. And so they were great at that. When I went to Hong Kong, I saw speed of service and a number of transactions they could do in small spaces in short periods of time. So they were great to learn about how to do queuing and how to just figure out how you get more people through that same small box, because if you don't get more people through over time, you're not going to make more money. So they were great at that. You just, again, going to different areas in Asia and Europe and South America, there's a strength in each one of those areas. You just have to go looking for it and then see how you can apply it back in your own business.
Well, it seems like you've been always thinking ahead, looking 5, 10, 20 years down the road. Shifting gears a little bit, because you've done a lot on food service to try to make your stores a destination. The industry as a whole is still pretty reliant upon fuel sales to generate traffic. And as we look at the trends, it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, long-term demand for fuels and the competition of electricity or alternative fuels. If we're seeing an improvement in efficiency and a decline of fuel sales, what are you guys anticipating, the future in the fuels business or the forecourt business in a broader term might mean for the industry going forward?
Well, I think the fuels business isn't any different than the way I approach things inside a store as well. When we're building a store, we're always trying to look at what are the various trends and how are we just going to adapt to them as the consumers change. So you can't have a perfect vision. I wish I did and say I saw every one of these things coming. But what you want to do is ideally try to lay out a platform that provides the ability to change and adapt your facilities to those new consumer requirements. So, when it comes to the fuel areas, it's about, for us, it was about buying larger lots than smaller lots because we anticipated we'd be providing different types of fuels to different types of vehicles. We couldn't have told you, how many were going to be trucks, how many were going to be electric cars, how many were going to be gas or some other type of powered vehicle. But we needed land to be able to deploy fuel strategies of the future, and that's really paid off, very well for us in terms of entering, the diesel business as it's blossomed to be able to have parking spaces for the electrical charging stations, to have enough room for a tank field where we can begin to expand our tank fields to accommodate the various biofuels that we have today and some that are still coming tomorrow. So all those things were intentional in the sense that we wanted larger properties to accommodate the change we thought was coming. We just didn't know exactly which one was the winner and which one was going to be the loser. But we placed those bets then over time as the consumers tell us.
Yeah, Stephanie, I've always used the term when you're planning for the future of fuels, optionality. Factor in options. So when something new, the big new thing comes by, you can flip a switch at a lower cost and get into the business early rather than having to dig up concrete and start from scratch again.
Well, I think that's a lot of the discussion that we've been having even over the last 10 minutes or so is how do you remain nimble and open-minded and not get boxed in?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I think it's easier for privately owned companies and publicly owned companies to do some of the things that are necessary for the long-term rate of returns versus the short-term rate of returns. So to your point, we did extra piping, 2 tanks, and made sure tank fields were big enough in anticipation of the biofuels. And again, throwing that switch that we could simply take a tank and fill it with the biofuel and begin blending without having to go out and tear up the parking lot and break the concrete. So that was an upfront expense that would not necessarily look good to a public company because there's a zero rate of return until you begin using it. But for a private company that's long-term vision-oriented, it made the world of sense to us that we would get that return. We just had to have a patience to wait for it. And now we're doing it. We're getting a return.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I do a lot of reading across different social media channels, and one thing popped up recently for me in the city of brotherly love, and there's quite a debate that has been going on in terms of the convenience store of choice, and the discussion has been around Sheetz or Wawa, and Governor Tom Wolf recently kind of riled up some of the voters and threw Rutters into the mix. My question for you is, how does something like that happen to where your name gets spoken out of the governor's mouth in terms of don't forget about Rutters?
Well, it certainly does help that the governor has been a customer of ours for the majority of his life, and I know the governor personally. I've served on charity boards with him through the years, and so it doesn't hurt that you know him, but it is much appreciated, and he's done this more than once where he's called out our brand because he tells me every time that he loves our stores and he loves what we offer, and therefore he's being honest. So it's not a case of any dishonesty there. He's a loyal regular shopper. He's in some of my stores at least once a day. So we love that. So that's kind of how it happens. He happens to be from my hometown.
Well, I thought it was interesting because you've taken a debate where, there's been people on both sides, but just for me, it was an example of when you're doing the things right and you're listening, and it's about share of wallet, share of customer mindset, and how do you cut through the clutter to still offer something that's unique. And clearly you've done a good job at that.
Well, he's a perfect example of why you need to also talk to politicians, because I have talked with him quite a bit through the years and when he was running, and he's able to help us in our business model, as well as being a customer is great, but also being somebody that understands your business model and your needs. He was instrumental in helping us get beer in convenience stores in our state. So those are, again, all the sort of things that's great to interact with all your different customers, but in this case, you never know who can help you improve your business model.
Well, great point. And I saw John give a little tap to his heart over here the moment that you talked about thinking of customers and not forgetting the political side. So I'll let him cue that one up for you.
As much as we'd like to forget about the politicians, you absolutely cannot, can you, Scott?
No, you can. And in fact, just right before this call, we had two political friends in here, and we talked about our business and also gave them a tour of our office. And it's that sort of thing that one of them said, "Wow, I had no clue how big your office was because I only see it from the street front. I had no clue how many people were in there and working." And I said, "That's why we wanted to give you a tour, because they do need to understand, and that opportunity to talk about jobs and taxes and how much we do to regenerate the economy, and why we need them and they need us, and it can make for a good economic partnership when they understand your business better than just seeing it from the street front."
You said earlier when you were talking about technology is the complexity of this industry. These elected officials have absolutely no clue how complex this industry is. And it's very simple to see a storefront, see some gas pumps and go, "Oh, okay, that's just, simple operations. So many one-store operators out there. How tough can it be?" But we've done the in-stores through the NACS government relations over the years. And when they get on site and they start talking to the employees, start talking to the store owner, they start understanding all the regulatory hurdles that you have to go through just to sell fuel or to sell food, then they start having a greater appreciation for what is really at stake here and how much government ill-informed policies can really crush a family business or any type of organization within this industry.
Well, I think policy, but the other piece of that too is informing them. I've always talked about convenience stores being that fabric that's kind of holding together the community. And when you think about the charitable donations, and Rutters is a great example of that, I think the last number that I read for you all was just over 700,000 in 2017. And that's incredible to be able to give back that. But to John's point, a lot of times that's unknown.
That's true, but yet when we had our meeting here today with one politician, that was one of the first things that came out of his mouth was, "How was your charity golf outing this year?" Because we invite them every year. And then we had a conversation about us raising $200,000 for charity in 2 days of golfing, and that's why you do need to talk to the people who are interested in hearing you, because they can learn a lot, and then they do get a better appreciation for what we do in our businesses in way of employment as well as community support, and convenience stores have a great industry reputation for that, and I think we should keep being very proud of it and shouting from the top of the mountain what we're doing.
So, Scott, for the last 15, 17 minutes, whatever, we've been on the phone. We've been talking about success stories, what you've done well, things you've achieved. And earlier you said you don't go overseas you don't care about people's weaknesses. You want to know their strengths. So let's turn it around. In the amount of time you've been in business, not everything has had the golden touch. What are one or two high-profile things that stick in your mind that you go, never again are we going to make that same mistake?
One of the biggest ones was that we do try to self-identify our weaknesses during strategic planning, so that we do learn from mistakes we've made. And the one consistent big one that we made through the years that we're constantly correcting is not, as I mentioned this earlier in the call, is not having acquired enough property when we initially were buying it for building a store, that we look back and would say, if we'd only just bought that house next door, we could have had it for a song and a dance. And now today they want a lot more songs and a lot more dances. And it's that much more complicated because now we have to go back through zoning and you name it. So acquiring the right amount of land at the front end is a mistake we've made. We rarely admit it. We've got stores that are landlocked. They're sitting on an acre or less of land. And for us as a company, with the stores we build, that's like a death trap for us. I mean, we're building, our average store is probably on 5 acres today, and we have a property that we're developing that's actually 100 and some acres. Not all for a convenience store, but we're now acquiring over 100 acres to build a store and do other things. So those are examples of just where, is it a terrible mistake? Well, it just depends on how you look at it, but it costs us money for not having done it right the first time, but we're getting better at that. In terms of other mistakes, probably in some technology providers. I won't mention the specific name of the companies, but we've, because we're out in front trying new ideas and new technologies, we've made a few mistakes where we've had to throw out, a point of sale system because it just couldn't grow and live up to the expectations that we wanted. And so those are painful when you say, geez, that cost me $1 million, but I have to change. So it was a $1 million learning experience.
Well, we started this off by kind of talking about humble beginnings to where you guys are. I mean, you've been chairman of NACS, you've been chairman of PCATS, now Connexus. You've won the International Convenience Retailer of the Year award. You guys are kicking rumps and taking names, it seems like, every time I turn around. So I just want to thank you for spending 20 minutes with Stephanie and I, sharing kind of your view on the industry, and congratulations on all the successes and great luck going forward, Scott.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Stephanie. And, oh, by the way, starting in June, the 11th generation's coming on board. So we got somebody to challenge you in the next couple of years to talk to and see how he likes it.
All right. Cue up the next podcast.
And thank you guys for listening in. We'll talk to you on the next episode of Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.